Walleye are a common sport fish and the largest member of the Percidae family. I'm going to talk about the reproductive age and growth success of walleye in relation to latitude. Walleye belong to the class Actinopterygii and the order Perciformes. They belong to the family Percidae, which contains other fish species such as darters and the rainbow darter, and perch such as the yellow perch. Walleye belong to the genus Sandar and the species Vitrus. The first thing I want to go over is a walleye compared to a sauger. They look very similar, and they both belong to the Percidae family, and even the same genus of Sandar. However, they are different species, though. The main difference is that the walleye will grow a lot larger. If you look at the dorsal fins, the sauger has black spots on the first dorsal fin that the walleye doesn't, and the walleye has a white patch at the bottom tip of its caudal fin that the sauger does not. I also wanted to give a quick background on the life cycle of walleye. In the spring, walleyes migrate to rocky shorelines or inlet streams with gravel bottoms where they will spawn. This migration might be a long distance. For example, Wisconsin DNR stated that walleye in Lake Winnebago may travel 100 miles up the Wolf River in order to find suitable spawning habitat. Males will arrive at the spawning sites first, usually outnumbering females. A female will be pushed onto her side by a male where she deposits her eggs. Males then fertilize the eggs. The eggs will hatch in 7 to 26 days, all depending on temperature. Males reach maturity in 2 to 3 years, and females will reach maturity in 4 to 5 years. If they are able to survive predation and reach adulthood, they then reproduce. This image gives you a general overview on the life cycle of a walleye. As you can see, eggs, once they're hatched, are called fries. Walleye are found natively in the central and north-central parts of North America. They've been introduced outside of that range, stretching south down into parts of states of Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Louisiana. They've also stretched out to the east coast and to the west coast, going into parts of California, Oregon, and Washington. Lake of the Woods, which is between Minnesota and Canada, is considered the walleye capital of the world by many. This leads us into the question of how does the location, specifically in terms of the latitude, play a role on reproduction, age, and growth success of the walleye. So reproduction is largely dependent on temperature, and therefore latitude plays a large role. In the north, spawning typically occurs just after the ice thaws and when water temps reach 5 to 7 degrees Celsius. Sometimes it can be pushed back all the way until June because of a late spring. In more southern latitudes, spawning begins when water temps get around 8 to 10 degrees Celsius. It should be noted that cooler water temps have a negative effect on egg development rates, and that those rates increase with the temperature increase. This top image shows average time of year that spawning begins, but it's not perfect because obviously each year is going to be a little different. The bottom image has a more broad range of spawning times for walleye. Similar to reproduction, growth is also largely dependent on temperature. For younger walleyes, the optimal temp for growth is 22 degrees Celsius, and for the most part, the optimal temp for walleyes is 18 to 22 degrees Celsius. As expected, latitudinal differences exist in the seasonal growth patterns. In northern extremes, temperature rarely gets above 22 degrees Celsius, so the optimal growing temp only exists for a short time during the summer months. On the other hand, in the south, water temp typically exceeds 22 degrees Celsius, and the growing season occurs in the late summer to the fall months. A 5-fold difference has been measured in the growth from northern latitudes to southern latitudes. This map over here shows growing degree days in different areas, and then in North America. Growing degree days are just an estimate of growth rate. It is estimated using average temperature. Age at maturity and longevity are related to climate, which again can be thought of as being related to latitude. I mentioned in the life history slide that walleyes reach maturity on average at 2 to 3 years of age for males and 4 to 5 years of age for females. On the extreme ends, walleye in the south can mature in as little as 2 years, and walleyes in the north can take all the way up to 11 years. Longevity of walleye can vary greatly from northern latitudes to southern latitudes as well. In the south, walleye can live as little as 5 years, and in the north, they can live all the way up to 30 years. Relating back to reproduction, it has been found that egg hatching success for walleye is positively related to age, but negatively related to female length when adjusted for age. This would mean that egg hatching success in the north would be greater than in the south, because northern latitude walleye tend to grow slower but live longer. The main influence so far has been temperature and climate. We've gone over how water temp plays a role in spawning, egg hatching time, growth, and age and longevity of walleye. Because temperature is largely dependent on latitude, differences of these processes vary from southern latitudes to northern latitudes. Temperature or climate are not the only factors that vary by latitude and can play a role on these processes, though. Other factors that can influence success of walleye are light and water clarity. Both of these factors can be related to latitude, which I'm going to go over in the following slides. These two factors focus mainly on feeding and in relation growth of walleye. Walleyes are known to be sensitive to light. They have an adaptation of scopic vision, which enables them to forage in dim light environments. Walleye also tend to spawn when light levels are low. Recently hatched walleye migrate downstreams with stream currents and increase their drift rate during low light times. Walleye have often been observed to be resting during daytime illumination as well. As the diagrams show, northern latitudes have more light compared to southern latitudes in the summertime. This means that walleye are likely to be less active for a larger amount of time in northern latitudes compared to southern latitudes. In winter, northern latitudes have less light. However, due to cold temps, walleye are still likely to have slower growth rates in southern latitudes. These light patterns help explain why southern latitudes tend to have higher growth rates for walleye. The last topic I want to talk about is water clarity. In clear lakes, adult walleye tend to be more nocturnal feeders. However, in turbid lakes, they can be diurnal and have a broader range of feeding times. Southern latitudes tend to have more turbid waters, but that can be due more to the land use in those regions than the latitude itself. Farming can play a role in water clarity with the runoff and pollutions that it can create. Another issue that water clarity can have on walleyes is that clearer lakes can favor other fish groups such as centrarchids, like these guys. More centrarchids can hurt walleye populations, and this has been seen in some Ontario lakes in Canada. Overall, there's a lot of factors that can affect water clarity that don't have to do with latitude, but in general, northern latitude lakes tend to be more clear than southern latitudes. This brings us to the end and the question, does latitude play a role in reproduction, age, and growth of walleye? Directly, latitude does not influence these processes. However, it does indirectly through the intensity of other factors such as climate or temperature, sunlight, and water clarity. As I've talked about, the intensity of these factors tend to be related to latitude. Water temp plays a large role in reproduction in terms of spawning time and egg development time. Northern latitudes have later spawning dates and longer egg development times compared to southern latitudes. Growth is also largely dependent on temperature, and southern latitudes tend to have higher growth rates. Longevity is related to climate as well, and northern latitude walleye tend to live longer than southern latitude walleyes. Light and water clarity also have impacts on walleye and can be related to latitude. Overall, where walleye are located in terms of latitude can have major impacts on their reproductive, age, and growth success. Here I've listed the sources that I used. I also want to apologize for the audio seeming to get louder and quieter at different parts of my presentation.